Hello, everyone. My guest today is Rajat Mukherjee. He is leading product now at a company called iQdo. Prior to that, he was CTO at a different company working on deep mobile search. And before that, led e-commerce business inside of Yahoo Small Business Unit. He launched Yahoo Stores and Yahoo Commerce Central after the acquisition of Lexity. And before that was product lead at Google on various projects from custom search to site search, search appliance, ads automation, and many others. All right, Rajat, you ready to take us to the top?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course, yeah. So tell us what iQdo does and what's your revenue model? How do you guys make money?
Sure. So we are really about helping people get things done. So we are about voice to action. And the goal is to basically take users from simple voice commands directly into actions that help them get things done. So we focused a lot on mobile apps in the beginning. Of course, we've branched out a lot since then. But we noticed that there was a big hole in the market in terms of getting people from their voice commands directly into the apps that they use on a daily basis, their personalized apps. So, for example, I can call my mom using Facebook Messenger. I can, communicate with my colleagues using Slack. I should be able to make a payment to somebody using PayPal or Venmo. And those things were not enabled in the existing platforms. So we started focusing on that. And now we have a full-blooded platform that helps people get things done quickly. We have a metric that we call time to action that helps us, measure this so that we are true to ourselves.
Okay, so you could pick up the iQdo app on your phone and say something like, tell Justin I'm running late for the meeting, and it will use WhatsApp to automatically send that message.
Absolutely. And if you have multiple apps, which is another thing that we are, is a differentiator for us, it will give you a choice in the beginning, right? Do you want to use WhatsApp or do you want to use Messenger?
Okay, but your interface though is a mobile app, is that right?
Actually, ours is a platform. So yes, in terms of delivery to end users, it is through other people's apps or through other applications.
Yeah, but how do I initialize it? Like right now on my phone, if I'm going to be late to a meeting today and I want to say, tell them I'm going to be late. How do I tell you to tell the app on WhatsApp to message my friend who I'm going to be late?
So right now we have, for example, a sample app in the App Store that you can download for your phone. But what we've done is we are working with partners we are live, for example, with Motorola. So we are powering Motorola's Moto Voice product, the actions there. So that comes built into the phone. So we are working with partners like phone manufacturers or with auto manufacturers or with app developers. And we can talk more about some of the partners we're talking to actually get our technology. We are a technology provider. So our platform is embedded into other people's solutions.
Okay. And how do you guys make money? Is it SaaS or something different?
So we are a licensing model. And then down the road, once we have volume, we're also going to have the ability to monetize that. So this is a search model. This is not very different. This, as you guys know, voice is really a search problem. And that's why, this is where Google and Amazon are really, focusing on, because the idea there is that every command effectively could be a separate monetizable unit.
Mm-hmm. So when you say licensing model, give me an example of a sample contract. Is it monthly, annually, multi-year, and what are they paying for?
So typically it's multi-year. And I think we mentioned that we can't get a lot into the revenues aspect of it because we're still a private company. But I can talk about the overall business model, which is that when we talk to large partners, for example, a phone manufacturer or a car manufacturer, we're talking about a multi-year contract where we monetize upfront. There's some aspects of customization, which we also charge for. But really, the goal is down the road, we're going to be charging effectively for those transactions, because those transactions.
What transaction? That's what I'm asking. What are you pricing against? When you say transaction, is it number of times people on a Motorola device use your tool to give a command in a given year? And that's going to be in the billions probably, or again, what do you price against?
Yeah. So our relationship with a partner like Motorola is a licensing model. So it's a fixed licensing model. And if they go beyond a certain number of commands, that's when we start charging on a per command basis.
Yeah, sorry, Rajat. We don't know what commands mean. That's why I'm asking what you're pricing against. What does a command mean?
So if I say, for example, find me a product on Amazon, right? And we take you to the Amazon app, or we say, find me a shirt, and we take you to the Walmart app. That is a transaction for us. It's like a
transaction or a command?
A command is a transaction, because in our world, a transaction takes you all the way.
Yeah, this is why I'm asking these questions, right? You're in the business. We're not in the business. So I want to get very clear on these metrics, right? So you basically sell to Motorola and say, here's a fixed fee model based off the number of commands you believe Motorola phone users will put through Motorola in the next year to 4 years.
Correct.
Okay.
And the pricing is basically on an annual basis.
Okay. And I mean, I'd like to get some general sense of how aggressive Motorola is being in terms of how much they think this will be used. Are they talking like hundreds of millions, or is it in the billions of commands per year?
Yeah, so I can't get into the details of that because that's pretty proprietary, as you can imagine. But the idea is that this is like a search model. That's why I bring it back to this, which is people are going to be using this on a daily basis. I'll give you a concrete example.
Was it billions though, or million? Maybe ignore Motorola. This space in general, billions or million? We're still in the high hundreds of millions range.
So this takes time, right? It's not going to happen overnight. So this is something that's going to build up. But think of it as eventually in the billions of
Again, I'm trying to ask so for me, I don't currently do this on my phone. So if I was on Motorola, I would be a big zero. Right now, they have millions of users. What I'm trying to understand is today, right? The volume, the volume, whether it's through you guys or not through your competitors, the volume of voice commands like this through these kinds of deals, is it in the scale of billions yet at this point, or is it still, nascent in the hundreds of millions?
It's already in the billions, but our share of that is smaller, as you can imagine, right? Google, Alexa, we are talking about Google, Alexa, Siri. This is the domain that we are in, but we are powering partners. White label solutions, if you will, right? So a partner would go in with their own brand and use our technology in their products. But the domain is really in the billions already.
Yeah. So I mean, how are you going to beat Google, Alexa, the ones you just mentioned? Well, shouldn't they do this?
So they are doing it, but let me tell you why we are still useful. So more and more partners are realizing that they need their own brand voice because they don't want to be necessarily behind an Alexa or behind a Google. And there are companies that actually try to serve that need. And that's where we play, which is providing our technology as a platform to these guys. And many of them want to build their own products, their own apps. They're starting to turn on voice in their own apps. For example, Bank of America, you might have heard, has launched their own voice assistant. This is becoming pretty commonplace.
Yeah, but who on earth is going to install an app specifically for their bank voice assistant? I mean, that's why Google and Alexa are the major players, because this is not actually a tech problem. It's a distribution problem.
You're absolutely right. And in fact, the distribution is in the mobile app. So let me kind of make the point. When we talk to app developers, they realize that the actual access through, say, an Alexa is actually minuscule. And that's because people are not necessary. It's not convenient. It's not ubiquitous. Whereas when I'm on the road, for example, why would I not be able to talk, use I use the Uber app or the Lyft app to actually call a cab, right? So more and more people are realizing that the usage is still on the mobile side of the house, and it is very valuable and it's getting more and more commonplace to actually be able to talk to those brands directly. So that's happening. It's still very early in the process, but in terms of our platform, it's already playing in other sort of areas. For example, in cars, we're talking to partners in the auto space where, obviously voice is very important for safety and privacy as well. And then we are also talking to media players where, for example, you're watching TV, but you're not able to talk to make any actions on your phone. So people are now using these devices concurrently, and we are trying to make it easy and seamless. So those are some of the interesting areas where we are playing.
So I guess let's use your Uber example, right? Uber is never going to get in the phone business. They're never going to have a phone. Okay. Google, Amazon tried, right? Apple has their own phone with Siri, right? They will all have voice basically right when the thing ships right in it. So isn't the winner in the talk to your Uber app space going to be Google or Alexa, right? Putting us or Siri directly on the phone. Hey, Siri, order an Uber. That's going to actually drive the command more than Uber trying to say, hey, all Uber riders, like download our Uber voice app right now so you can talk to Uber and order drivers. My point isn't the reason that Google and Alexa and these guys are so big is because of distribution.
So the distribution is an absolute, very important point. So the distribution right now, when I'm saying they're not going to manufacture phones, but their apps are already in the hands of users. So users are already using the app. Now, the question is, why can't you talk to your app? Why do you have to tap your way through the app, right? So this is already happening. And that's why I gave the Bank of America example, which is you're in the Bank of America app, you're thinking banking. You are currently using the app through taps. But now what you can do is use it through voice.
Yeah, so but what about no? That's my point though, Rajat. There's 2 taps to open the app. If I could just pick up my phone and talk to Siri, there's no taps. And it says, and if Siri directly via API connects to the banking commands, then you do it with no tap. That's my point. There's less friction to use the native thing versus downloading the voice specific use case for whatever app it is that you want to talk to.
So the point there is brand. People don't want to necessarily lose their brand. So that's the other thing, which is branding. And then the other use case that I was talking about is in the car. People like Mercedes doesn't want to be behind an Alexa. In fact, they've launched their own voice application, right? There are companies that are doing this because they care about their brand and they don't want to be disintermediated. This is another point, which is if I say, get me a ride, am I going to get an Uber or am I going to get a Lyft? And does Uber have any control? If it's Google or if it's Alexa, they're going to make a decision. So there are all these different dynamics at play here, and the market is still very very early and it's evolving. The point I'm making is we are providing our platform as a technology provider to these guys, and there are different use cases. As I said, apps is one use case, cars is another use case, where these brands, big large brands, want control over their own users and their own user experience, and very important, their own data. That's another aspect, which is they want to be able to monetize that data down the road. And today they lose control over their data and their users if they just hand it off to a Google or an Alexa or to a Siri. So this is a market that's still evolving, and we are seeing traction because people want to build their own experiences and control their own user experiences as well as monetization.
Well, yeah, but none of that considers the consumer, right? Of course, brands want to control the brand, but if the consumer has to do a bunch of extra taps or a bunch of extra things where there's more friction, they're never going to win. They can spend all the money they want to spend with you building a custom app, but if consumers don't use it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that we will make it much easier for these brands to make it easier for their consumers, because you'll notice that a lot of the stuff does not actually work within an Alexa or a Google unless the developer actually has to do a lot of the work. One of the other important aspects, which I should have mentioned earlier, is that we can onboard these actions, and we have a whole bunch of these actions without talking to the developers. That's part of our technology. So I can, for example, you can now do things in Facebook, WhatsApp, WeChat, PayPal that you cannot do in Alexa, that you cannot do in Google Assistant even today.
Got it. All right. Talk to me about history here. When did you guys launch the company?
So the company is a little bit more than 2 years old. And we launched with funding from Atlantic Bridge, which is our VC. They're very supportive of what we are doing. And we very quickly actually acquired a company in Belfast, Ireland, that does a lot of our machine learning and AI for us. So we have a very experienced team, both here in Silicon Valley.
What's the total team size today?
Total team size is about 30 people, about 50.
And how much total did you say you had raised?
We raised $5+ million with in Series A. We are looking to raise a Series B this year.
Okay, and what's the right amount to raise in a Series B, you think? What's your target?
I think we are targeting something in the range of total of about 15 or so. The reason being that this is obviously, as you can imagine, a very difficult space. It's a very hard problem to solve. And although we've cracked a bunch of these problems, we are in the space where we need to have enough bandwidth to be able to do these hard problems. Mm-hmm. So we are already ahead of, in some ways, on some of the technologies that, for example, Amazon is trying to solve right now. But as you can imagine, they have huge teams and huge amount of resources. So we have to be very selective and focus on the problems that we think we can do better.
Yep. And I mean, it sounds like you're still in kind of the experimental space with a few key licensing partners. I mean, when do you plan to aggressively turn on revenue?
So we are already, we already have revenue with the partners that we're talking to, and we also have a bunch of these different pilots, as you said.
Is it true recurring though, or is there professional services like testing, building a custom app with, Uber to see how it works?
No. So some of our deals don't have anything to do with apps. I want to be very clear about that, because I think we spent a lot of time talking just about apps, but we're also basically plugging into other entry points, is what I'm saying. We call them voice channels.
Oh, sure, Motorola.
So Motorola is their own voice assistant. That's a special case, right? So phone OEMs would basically use our technology to power their own voice assistant. As you may be familiar that Samsung, for example, has its own voice assistant called Bixby, right? And Google obviously has Google Assistant, and Apple has Siri. But many of the phone OEMs are looking at their own branding, their own.
Yeah, Rajat, I totally understand the product. My only question is, when do you get to the point where you really are scaling your licensing model versus doing kind of early testing where they're paying you like a consulting fee to like do viability experiments?
Yeah, so our first deal was already a licensing model.
Okay.
But we're already talking to a bunch of partners where right now we are in the second phase, which is like validation. As you can imagine, it's very strategic, right? So they take their own time and you're very deliberate about their decisions. But once some of those become deals, we're really talking about scale already, because these are large partners.
Got it. Okay. So you've got one customer where, again, it's already a licensing model. Then you have a bunch of pilots you're running on all these different kind of experimental channels that have the opportunity to be much bigger deals in the near future.
Absolutely.
Okay, makes good sense. And now, how are you supporting 30 people, right? I mean, if you have one customer, I have no idea what that customer is paying, but I mean, assume you're burning a crap ton of money, but you haven't really raised that much. So how are you funding 30 people?
Yeah, so we are obviously very conservative in terms of our spend, and also because we have a team in Belfast, the costs are much lower than, for example, in Silicon Valley. So we are basically being scrappy, and we are trying to make sure that we are being very responsible about how we spend. but really about getting. We also have for example payments around some of the pilots and things like that. So it's not like so we have revenues as well. So but we are, as you said, trying to get to the point where we have a scale around multiple partners, and I think we are at the juncture where that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fascinating to me when a company like yours, to go out and raise a 15 Series B, if you only want to sell 10-20% of the company, right? You're basically trying to get at something like a 50, 60, $70 million pre-money valuation, right? With essentially one customer and some other experiments. It's always fascinating to me the story that you decide to tell to try and get that valuation and minimize dilution.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially because the big names are in the picture, right? No doubt about that. But it's also very important to note that this is super strategic, which is what people realize right away, which is it's a hard problem to solve. You guys have solved some of these very, very hard problems that have not yet been solved, for example, by Alexa. So you're serving a need that these platforms are not serving yet at scale. For example, the apps, we have thousands of actions available to our Motorola customers, most of which are not available on some of these other platforms. So they're seeing the value proposition of the product. So definitely it's strategic. It's very important for us to be able to convince them that it's strategic. And by the way, as you can imagine, these are areas where there's a lot of investment going in as well. But of course, as you said, it's a place, it's very challenging as well for us to actually emerge from this.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like with the one license deal you have today, plus if some of these other pilots land into true licensing deals, do you feel like you can, in the next 12 to 18 months, get up to something like, a $5 million run rate to justify a healthy 15 million Series B?
Absolutely.
You think it's possible?
It's not just possible. If we execute, it's likely.
Okay. Very good. All right. Let's wrap.
It's really about execution and also the fact that the market is maturing. It is, as I said, deliberate. So it takes time. So because these are big partners, it takes time. It is strategic. They have to figure out what they want to do with their own voice strategy because they've actually been burned a little bit by some of the early efforts around Alexa, where they're not getting the traction and the ROI. But they really understand that voice is here. Voice is definitely here. And it's really about how our brand's going to engage with their own brand voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Let's wrap up with the famous five. Number one, what's your favorite business book?
Actually, I haven't had much time to read a lot, but I've been following, for example, the biography of Pep Guardiola, who is actually one of my favorite coaches. He's actually a coach in sort of soccer. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But
what's the book?
It's Pep Confidential. I've been reading it, and I try to, obviously it's about team. It's really about performance and team. And he's one of the most eminent coaches in soccer with Barcelona and Bayern Munich. And now he's Manchester City's coach. So I try to bring some of his philosophies and team performance into work.
Great. Number two, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
I'm not studying anybody, but I'm super impressed with what Elon Musk is able to do.
Great. I mean, number three, what's your favorite online tool for building your company?
At this point, I follow, I guess, tech news because I have to keep abreast with what I have. So I wouldn't say there's a specific tool, but I do read a lot of the content online.
All right. Number four, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
I get about 7 hours.
And how old are you?
I am pretty old. So I'm 50, what is it? 53 or 54 or so.
54. Okay. And what's your situation? Married, single, kiddos?
I have two boys. The older one works for Google. The younger one is at USC and is currently interning at Apple.
Very cool. Okay. And the last question here. Take me back to your 20-year-old self. What do you wish you knew?
I wish I knew that it is possible to kind of run your own business. I was obviously a student coming in for grad school and, going through the normal path. But had I been in California, I would have probably been in the entrepreneurial kind of line much earlier. I was in New York for a while.
Guys, Aikido propelling things like the Motorola kind of voice actions on Motorola devices and other devices, whether it's an app or other entry points, because voice is here. They've got essentially one customer paying on a license model, pure license model today. They've got a lot of pilots, though, cranking. People understand this is important, hoping to call it a $5 million run rate in the next 16 to 18 months, hoping to maybe go out and do a $15 million Series B sometime soon as well. They've raised $5.2 million today, a team of 30 people as they look to continue to scale. Rajat, thank you for taking us to the top.
Hey, thanks a lot. And I hope I got the point across that this is across a platform and multiple different entry points.